Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by Neil, 10th Man, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Yeah. Let's get it going.
Neil's happy because the Rangers won. Good morning, everybody.
Correct them and go.
Nobody cares about the Rangers. Anybody in Discord care about the Rangers? See? Nobody cares about the Rangers. See, I used that silence at the beginning of the live show to my advantage today, Neil. See how I did that?
You got to make sure Discord's working, though, first.
Yeah, I know they're not going to respond.
I see the way you did it.
Yeah, exactly.
Working.
There you go. Getting after the fact because they were insulted that I said they wouldn't respond and I predicted so. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere-edge horizon, formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
Enough of this. My brother knows a scientist, quite a few scientists, and they said this flat Earth is a psyop and it's stupid. Enough.
Yeah, but we're asking about Earth curve, where the horizon is supposed to be Earth curve.
Take a rocket ship up, pay the money, and you will see Earth curve. Actually, he thinks you will see the whole ball.
Yeah, but if it's blocking the bottom of boats and buildings, don't we see it?
We debunked Earth curve as being the horizon, so we haven't got a geometric physical limitation like a hill blocking boats and buildings. What we've got is a horizon. You know, it's not actually a location at all. I know it's claimed to be blocking boats and buildings, but that's very much a 2015 position to be taking from their side.
Yeah, well, that's my point. Why do you need to go up to see it when they're telling us you see it because it's blocking boats and buildings? So it should be blocking boats and buildings, except it's not.
Like, I hate to be pedantic, but let's not stop calling it it. What do you mean it? What's it? What are you going to go up and see when you say it?
Meaning their argument.
Meaning Earth curve.
Ball Earth.
Meaning
Earth.
Earth curve at the horizon, which is distinguished by nothing in terms of what you actually are going to see at altitude versus what you'll see at the ground. You can see a horizon from the ground, and the horizon's claimed to be Earth curve. So this nonsense notion that you have to go up to some height to see a different Earth curve, well, no, that's sidestepping the fact that there would also be simultaneously a left to right curvature in that physical limitation we think the horizon is when we were ballers in 2015. Well, that limitation would also bend and become more and more sphere-shaped as you go up if the horizon was Earth curve. It isn't. We debunked it. Doesn't matter what height you're at. It's claimed to be at 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height of feet. Well, height in feet, it doesn't matter how high you go. That's still claimed to be the limitation to your view. And we've debunked it.
Yeah,
Eratosthenes didn't go up, did he? He just measured an elevation angle from the surface of the Earth. He didn't go up anywhere, and he measured, apparently, the curve of the Earth using an angle measurement.
Precisely. You're going to need a flat Earth for all of their measurements. Do you want to continue with the housekeeping, 10th? Hey, Arwin.
Hello, guys.
Yeah, that's fine. Any evidence of Earth radius, the R value?
It can only be derived from a flat plane.
Al Baruni measured it, but he had to, first of all, get an elevation angle off the flat horizontal baseline at the foot of the mountain.
You want to go into that, Arwin? What you meant by that?
Well, how you could still do it, you can't really use the geometry of the horizon anymore, right? Because of black swan observations, but you can still just take the celestial lineup of like sun and moon averaging position, which would be recognized as the equator line within the map projection based on the celestials onto that flat plane, and then like derive the circle of that into, well, the circumference, which you can then use to back calculate the radius. Is that detailed enough?
Well, no, I meant the initial move was to use angle measurements. Wouldn't that
That's
be
not
bunk?
the question, right?
Is there any evidence of Earth radius to our value? And then you answered something considering angles, right? Yeah, you need a flat Earth to do that?
I didn't say that. I said we derive it from a flat plane.
Right. And so angle measurements can only be done from a...
Flat plane.
Thank you. Any evidence of axial rotation, Earth-based variety?
Stars rotating.
Oh, here we go again. Yes, either the Earth is rotating or the stars are rotating, and you say the stars are rotating.
No, the
right?
gas is rotating with the Earth, right?
Oh,
So it's
The
like
Earth
columns that are like
doesn't spin all the-
cells in lockstep moving lockstep with the Earth rotation.
Sure, why not?
All relative.
why not? All right, so Nathan, let me ask you something. Since you're playing baller here, if the Earth is moving, you're saying that's why the stars seem to be moving, but it's really the Earth moving, correct?
I just said the stars are moving. That's all I said.
Yeah, but why are the stars moving? Why are they moving?
Because Earth's turning beneath its Coriolis deflection.
Gotcha. Okay, so if the stars are moving or they seem to be moving to us because we're on the Earth and it's actually spinning, then shouldn't anything like an airplane or a drone, hot air balloons, shouldn't they deviate?
They do. So if you fire a bullet at a target a long way away, you have to concern yourself with how much Earth will turn beneath the bullet. Also, Neil deGrasse Tyson calculated precisely how much turn of the Earth there'd be when he claimed that the field goal was assisted by Earth's rotation. Well, that'd be Earth rotating underneath the ball to assist the field goal. So yes, that Coriolis deflection described in the stars is also applicable because we have two reference frames, Earth turning beneath a second inertial reference frame. That's correct.
So a flight from Charlotte, North Carolina to LA, does that take an hour and a half because Earth's turning towards it? Or does it still take over 4.5 hours?
Yes, it does. That's correct.
It
like
does.
the football, Earth turns beneath a flight from Charlotte, North Carolina, and if you're travelling to LA in that direction, the flight only takes an hour and a half. Everyone knows that.
Really? Well, at least you're being honest about it, but your facts won't bear out because the flight still takes over 4.5 hours to come back. So Earth is not turning.
There's no bears in LA.
There's no what?
Bears.
Bears?
What?
Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
The Bears are in Chicago.
No evidence for a distance to the sun. I'm still trying to figure out what the bears meant.
What about, do you, Discord? Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
Well, the distance of the sun, isn't it just derived from the assumption that Venus is the same size and then a bunch of angular shifting and then a value is assigned?
You know, when we face the anti-flat earthers and they throw things at us in regards to our arguments, well, in recent days, they've thrown back in our direction this elevation angle height. So while we call it an elevation angle measurement, you're talking literally about the height as the angle through the protractor or sextant, but you're not actually getting its height, but we're challenged and charged to acquire the height from our opponents. Now, until now, I was just like, well, that's just a minor rotation because you just point out it's not required or necessary to do triangulation. And that was kind of the end of it. But then it occurred to me, why are we being asked to acquire the height? Is it so that they can pull us into the false dichotomy if we say it's 3000K or whatever the claim from flat earthers is? So they can argue that their height's a different height? But then it suddenly dawned on me that no, it doesn't stack up as a false dichotomy, because in their version of triangulation, when they acquire an elevation angle from a flat plane and give us the justification for how they've got tangent planes to horizons we don't see that are being corrected for dip, they don't actually have an ascribed height to the star or the sun in this example. So that's why they're asking. Typically when they've got a weak-ass part of their argument, rather than defend that weak part of their argument or have it even be discussed, charge us with explaining it, a la the Earth curve edge that is the disk Earth with a boat falling over it, when in reality Earth curve is an edge that boats are falling over. It's just not the horizon. We've debunked it, but that's very much their position rather than ours. Weak when the horizon's not physical, and weak enough for them to project their argument onto us and ask us where our edge is all the time. Well, this is no different. Them asking us from the anti-flat Earth side what the height of the sun, in this example when you're using it for triangulation, is because they can't ascribe a height to it anymore. They have it set at an infinite distance to do triangulation. They're not measuring the height either. In fact, they're relinquishing their, Kepler's third law of interplanetary motion in terms of the scaling values they've acquired by our values ascribed to Venus. Well, that has to be put to the wayside the moment you ask them back, well, what's the height of the sun then? You're triangulating this. Okay, let's just take it as read, that we've got a horizon second one that we can't see. It's debunked. It hasn't got a straight line to it, but we will have a straight line to it for this example. Okay, with that notwithstanding, what's your height of the sun? Let's see what their answer is. I'd like to know. Comment below, ballers. In your triangulation method, what's the height of the sun?
I want to answer this. It's a good postulation. It's a good question. But they just don't need it, right? The only thing they need is to just presuppose that the Earth is a ball, whether that is provable or not to them. It doesn't matter. That's the only way they see it. Infinite distance, Earth, a ball underneath, then it matches enough to them. They just don't need that height. They don't need any of that.
They haven't said they do or don't, and it's never come up until I've just raised it. But ultimately, while you say they don't need it, they have ascribed it. It's already a claim in situ for the heliocentric model. I realise there's been a few people that have come and gone. I think it was Bob the Science Guy that had this in his presentation and sort of said, well, yes, we'll set them at an infinite distance just for this example. Or it might have been Zanuck. I forget who, but I'm sure there was more than one that just rolled past that little detail. Now, we've also had 10th Man on numerous occasions tell us this, why we know. We all know. Nobody's challenging me on it and going, really? Do they have it in it? No, we all know this. But we're being asked what the height of the star is, and we've never claimed one here. I know other flat earthers have, and stereotyping fallacies aside, we're not claiming it. We're still being asked it, though. Yeah, which is very telling.
We don't really need it either.
From past experience.
Right? Sorry. We don't really need it either, right? For us,
no. Stop. You're looking at this wrong, Owen.
From the celestial sphere.
Owen.
And then parallel.
Owen. Just one sec. You're looking at it wrong. Whether or not we need it is quite specific, because we not only don't need it, we're not claiming it. That's the point. When you juxtapose us not claiming a height at all, regardless of if we need one or not, we don't. Now you're saying, by contrast, neither do they need a height. No. Yeah, they do. They've already got one ascribed. It's part of their claim. So when you say they don't need one, well, why have they got it as part of their claim? Are they relinquishing that? Well, yeah, up until now, they just brushed past that. Well, no, hold on. Why have we got the stars at infinite distance when you talk about straight lines to geometric horizons we can't see, but can see to correct from? That paradox aside also, why is it that we're just letting them roll with the fact that they're setting their stars to infinite distances now? Just to do this also, and just yet another thing that they have to relinquish in the model. We'll relinquish the curved surface. We'll draw out a tangent plane. We'll correct for dip from a horizon we can't see, that we've got a straight line to correct from it when we do see it, but we can't see it. We give them all that, and then they go, oh, well, as for the stars, we'll also set them infinitely distant. Well, why? Why would we tolerate that?
Excuse me, but this sounds maybe a little silly, but They're ballers. This is what they do. This is what they've always done. Why would we tolerate them being ballers is basically what I'm hearing in your question.
No, I'm saying,
Like,
why wouldn't we
duh.
hold them to their claim
They're-
when they roll with the punches that they can set them to an infinite distance because they need to set it to an infinite distance, as opposed to stick in line with their claim that they're at certain distances that they've got measured according to them? Well, if you're going to set them to an infinite distance, does that mean that the claim that they are at set distance doesn't work then? Because why would you have to set
Nothing
them
about
infinite?
what they do works. They only adapt their argumentation to contemporary situations in order to have a seeming overhand and grip on the situation. It's much more about make-believe, like make-believe understanding than actually making a consistent case. It's what they always do. It's what they do back and forth, even in the same sentence if you push them, right? They don't need that consistency. Like, you would need it if you want to actually prove something. That's not what they're doing. They're just following the religion.
But the religion says they're at a set distance. That's my point.
Yeah, but it's not relevant to them.
It is. That's why I'm saying we should hold them to it. When they say, oh, well, what about when we draw these angles out? Well, are we drawing these angles out to the scaled distances in the heliocentric model if you're claiming Earth's a sphere? Would be my next question from this point forward. You'll say, well, they don't need it. Well, do they not need their claim of a 93 million mile sun? Because if they don't need it, why are they claiming it? And because they are claiming it, I'm going to damn well hold them to it. Shout
Well,
out
good
to
luck
Godzilla.
with that. They're never going to do it because that makes things too cluttered. That's like asking them, hey, could you show us how to navigate on a ball Earth with a sextant? No, they're not going to do that. They're just going to show you some kind of weird displacement of a flat Earth on a ball, and it makes no sense. That's what they're going to show. They're not actually going to do it. Are you actually expecting ballers to really work out things as if they were on a ball? That's not what they do.
But you got to be careful with what you say. Yes, I expect ballers to do that. What I know is anti-flat earthers don't. Just let me read out Godzilla's super chat before we move on with this, Arwin. Sorry. I'm still sitting over here with 10th, wondering what you meant by no bears in California. ... I can't go forward with my day until this is answered. Just scroll 60 seconds before I said it and listen to what 10th man said to yield that response, Godzilla, and then you'll understand. But I'm not going to explain it, no. Like puns, that's just not what we do here. It's not what I do.
We're doing
here.
Easter egg puns now?
Pardon?
Are we doing Easter egg puns now?
Puns should always be Easter eggs. The ideal pun goes over the head of everybody in the conversation, and only a third person listening in catches it and sniggers. That's the ideal pun. It doesn't disrupt the conversation. Nobody discusses it or laughs about it. Only the onlookers laugh.
That's not what seems to be happening on the Flat Earth debates, though.
No, I appreciate that. We've got a very low standard in terms of our puns. The standards need to be raised.
Wait a minute.
I didn't say
Morning,
that.
guys.
What do you
Hey,
mean low
Chocolate.
standard on our puns? Hey, Chocolate.
Yo, Choco.
Well, I got mine, what I would call a high standard of pun. I got about 5 in yesterday, and no one picked up on any of them. Then an audience member, when I published it to the members yesterday after the show finished recording, one of the audience members picked up on one of them. I'm like, that's good. You don't want all 5 to get noticed immediately. But if one gets... And I did repeat it, which kind of annoyed me when I listened back. I was going, oh, if I hadn't have repeated it, would he have picked up on it? Maybe he wouldn't. Anyway, let's not discuss puns. We were doing housekeeping, but I kind of took over when I dropped in that bear
So
comment.
back to the distance. So you're saying they have both sides of the argument at the same time.
I'm saying that they have to relinquish a very fundamental part of their model in terms of their scale and distance, which is asserted when they claim they're on a sphere. Well, if you're going to relinquish a very major part of your claim in order to do celestial navigation, in my view, that should draw a what's the word? Not a segue. Like a chunk of the argument should take place there, in my view.
So because they give an actual distance to the sun, 93 million miles, but then they say in celestial navigation, they're at infinite distance. That's what you're drawing attention to, correct?
Well, I'm saying that. So what's the dealio there then? So obviously we're all being told 93 million miles to this and various distances to the other planets that they've all got set, and tell us that that's the right distances. Okay, well, that's what we've got to accept if we accept that Mars is a planet and it's so far away and people are travelling to it, right? It's pretty fundamental. They're sending shit there. Excuse my French. They're sending stuff to Mars with calculated distance. They've even got Neil deGrasse Tyson telling us it would be more difficult to fake the moon landings than me do a quick calculation on how much fuel they'd need. So the distances are pretty critical. But yet, when we're doing navigation on the ground to actually find our way around stuff we do experience, as opposed to space, we're going to relinquish that idea and notion that Mars is a certain distance away. Why?
Well, if you're going to hold them to that, you might as well hold them to the rest of it. They assume the Earth is stationary and a celestial sphere that's turning.
I'm a little puzzled about you stating like, oh, but they're relinquishing a major chunk of like their entire model. Oh, you mean like the horizon that's suddenly not geometric anymore, and the Coriolis deviation that we don't expect to see? I mean, they've done that with every part of their model. Every part.
Yes, and it's always good to highlight when they do, to have that sort of summary that you've just given, Arwin.
Did what I say to go over everyone's head? It wasn't a pun.
No, what did you say?
I said, if you're going to hold them to that, hold them to the fact that they have to admit the Earth must be stationary and it's a celestial sphere that's turning.
Sure.
That's their model.
Sure, but in the same way the last day and a half I've been arguing, yeah, as a result of Earth turning underneath, yeah, you can consider them as moving when you do the celestial navigation, but that's because Earth's turning underneath. You just don't consider it that way, even though that is the case. That would be my position as a baller. So focusing on that doesn't help. Whereas if you say, okay, we'll take all of those things as read, right? Okay, the stars are moving as a result of Earth turning underneath, but we'll only pay attention to what we see because we're going to use the apparent motion of the stars. We're also going to do dip correction from a geometric horizon with a straight line to it that we can't see, but can see for this example, to correct with the second horizon that we do see, and we're going to correct from a globe because we've got one, even though we can't see that horizon. So that's all going to be accepted too. Okay, so we've just, we're further down this begging the question hole than we need to be. I know that's the point you're making. But I'm saying when we get to this point, and they've got the diagram up, because typically that's where they'll start, with the diagram drawn out with the tangent planes and the dip horizon, all put on paper before they start their explanation. So you go, okay, so if that's where they start, what's the next step on? Well, let's measure an angle to the star, notwithstanding the tangent plane in the dip angle. Okay. And that's going to be at the distances ascribed to it in the heliocentric model, the whole point of the justification for the sphere and the circle that you've drawn as it on this whiteboard or whatever they're drawing it on. Okay. Well, what about those distances? Well, you've got Mars at a set distances. They're claiming to send stuff there at great expense. Are you telling me that that doesn't work anymore once you've started at the point where you're measuring the angle? From a not flat plane without the ground being considered as the ground you're measuring the angle from, and a dip to a horizon that we can't see because it's bent. So we've done all that. You're now going to relinquish the stars as well? I'm just saying that this is where they start, isn't it? All the things we're saying, oh, well, we're way down the begging the question fallacy at this point. Yeah, that's where they start with their diagram and their videos, though, isn't it? Next step, measured angle, 2 stars. The stars at the distance you say they are? No. We're gonna change that. So I want to start them off on their path when they've started their begging the question fallacy well and truly into it by pointing out the next flaw in the string of flaws that they've had to accept to get to that diagram and be a starting point for a video. So, okay, measure angle to, I'm sure there's plenty of planets that are navigational. Well, let's measure an angle to that planet to triangulate with it. What's that you say? It's no longer at the distance that NASA are claiming proof of sending people to moon and such because of the fuel and the calculatable distance. Why are we relinquishing that? It's only the first thing we're doing. And we've got to immediately relinquish a major part of the heliocentric model after you've started begging the question, all the angles and disclaimers I gave a moment ago. Do you see I'm driving at?
Yeah, it just sounds like the story's got to change again, depending on if you're dealing with real life practicality or some fake shit. So when it's fake shit, oh, we know the distances. We send helicopters to Mars and stuff. Yeah. But when it's real, when it's something we have to actually do, like navigate on Earth, what do? Oh, we pretend we don't know those things, and we just measure the elevation angles. That's it. Just change it. No matter what you need, you got what you want.
Yeah, exactly,
Like a
chocolate.
Chinese buffet.
Exactly. You've got it. You've hit the nail squarely on the head. Right. Their starting point is, here's my circle with lines drawn to a tangent point. Here's a sensible horizon, and here's the maths that we're going to do. So let's start doing it. Step 1, measure elevation angle to the light that's all coming in parallel. That's where they begin. So you go, okay, light all coming in parallel. So what about something that's closer? About Mars? Is Mars actually a navigational star? 10th.
I believe so.
Right, so let's go with Mars. Mars is somewhere they're sending.
Hang on. If you could see it, you can use it. They have 64 total in the air almanac and over 200 in the nautical, so I'm sure it's in there.
Okay, well, if we're using Mars, then it's much, much closer than a lot of the other navigational stars, as opposed to wandering stars. Well, in this instance, okay, let's draw an angle to it then. Sorry, we've suddenly got to forget about the distance. No, that's imperative. I mean, we know we've been to the moon because we know the distance and the fuel amount needed, right? So it's critical. I mean, that's how we find our way to the moon. Are you going to relinquish that claim of known distances to get to the moon or Mars because you're going to navigate actual reality now? Let's get that clear. Step 1, measure angle to star. What's the distance? Like I say, this started with me pointing out that we're being asked it when we here specifically don't claim it. But they claim it, and suddenly unimportant, according to Arwin. No, I see it as deeply important, because if you're going to step in and address a video where they've already begged the question, it's already on the whiteboard, well then take umbrage with the next step they take. Measure the angle to the star at the distances you say in your model, because your model's on the board already, isn't it? So, okay, we're going to have to accept all that already as begging the question. Totally acceptable, right? What's next step? Measure a distance that you haven't got and needs to change? Big problem.
Well, that was my point when I said you might as well throw in the fact that, like Chocolate summarized it perfect. They keep changing their story, but that's the whole point of them changing the story. Is now we have to assume the Earth is stationary and the stars are moving. So why are they changing the story?
Well,
Nathan,
I've covered that.
Yeah,
that's where we began. I've got to cover that again. Okay. Because even if I say that I will use the apparent motion of the star, just by dropping in the word apparent, woohoo, 100 people watching, please share the show. Very warm welcome if you've just joined us. And the only reason we've got 100 people watching is because the people here have shared the show. So if you haven't already, smash that share button. And
Nathan, I didn't say it was unimportant, okay? I just said that's business as usual. They do it with everything.
I can't remember the words you had used exactly now, because you've put enough distance from my short-term memory to have forgotten it. But you said it's not important to them, or something like that. It's not needed for them.
Important to them, yes, correct. Because they throw everything under the bus, right?
Yeah, but
all the time.
That's it. But that's what we should start with. If they've already begged the question and got it on the whiteboard, like Dr. Bob or whoever he's called, that's the point. They say, okay, so you're going to start with this assumption, with the dip to a horizon that we've debunked. Okay, I'll accept all of it. Next step, measure angle to the distance, because we're going to use Mars. What's that? You're going to project the angle out to parallel rays, making Mars infinitely distant. Why? It's got an ascribed distance, and it's apparently very important. We need to know that, otherwise we wouldn't get the stuff to it. Are you relinquishing that we're getting stuff there? Because if you're actually doing stuff that might save your life on the ground or on the sea, you're going to use that as a navigational star and just forget that it's got this distance that NASA are sending stuff to, because your life depends on it. And the only way it works, if you also want to keep your globe faith, is to basically relinquish NASA's claim that they've got a distance to it. Because if you're going to not die and use a ball, you'll have parallel light and an infinite distance to it. So, life or death, which one you're going to choose if you're out at sea navigating and you're using all these begging the question fallacies? You've got light coming in parallel, right? So, life or death, very literally, but figuratively. Which one you're going to pick? Is NASA right, or is the light coming in parallel?
Well, at sea, distances to any of the celestials are completely irrelevant. Distances are a purely astronomical conception anyway. It's just a
not when you're sending stuff there. when you're sending stuff there, picture the scenario.
What?
We
When does
are
that happen?
all out at sea, Arwin, together with a baller. And the baller says, no, I can do this celestial navigation when I assume dip and put in the maths that's been hijacked to get a more accurate correction from the horizon that we do see. That's because we've got a non-physical horizon, and the dip in my long-winded calculations I am going to use, because even though we're in a life and death situation and need to know where the hell we are, I'm still going to retain my ball faith, even though it'll take me 25 minutes to do the maths. You go, okay, so you can do it then. Yeah, I can. It does take a while, but here we go. I'm doing it. Look, check it out. My dip's from a geometric horizon, therefore I've got my ball in already. Right, okay, fine, mate. Okay, you've kept your ball faith till now. Good on you. Now we're going to use the angle we've measured. Right, in your diagram that you've just shown us, we're out at sea, we're going to die. What we're going to do, are we going to mess up this measurement by using the distance, because we've done it with Mars, to Mars? And he goes, no, at this point, the light's coming in parallel. It's considered to be in it. Sorry. So, gun against your head, you're going to say that NASA are wrong. Because for us to figure out our position right here, right now, out at sea lost, you're going to say that the light on this diagram is how you're going to move forward with this calculation. And that's going to fly in the face of NASA's claim that there's a distance to it. So, life or death situation, your money's on NASA being wrong in order to navigate.
Oh, I think I get it now. But that's kind of niche, though. Like,
we're talking about navigation. We're talking about being lost. We're talking about triangulation to find our position. When the baller begs the question and says he can still do it, he's got two choices when he gets to this point. NASA are lying. They don't have the distances, because if you take it as read that they have, you're going to get your calculations wrong. Because if you continue with your sphere begging the question, the light's going to come in parallel. Therefore,
Right.
infinite distance. Therefore, NASA, you're going to throw them away to save your life at
they
sea
are.
to find your position.
They have to. They have to do it, right? Because they can't use the astronomy information. They can only actually use the navigation information, which is all based just on angles. It's just the angles to the celestials. That's it.
Well, why is that though? Because that's practical. In real life,
exactly.
people actually have to get places, and people can actually do that. But the other stuff, like sending a helicopter to a light in the sky, that's a second law of thermodynamics violation. Yeah, that's nonsense. So we don't need the distances then.
Well, for navigation, you don't need any distance information at all. You just need the angles and the sort of flat star map for navigation. It's not literally flat. It's just a trick they do with angles of stars exactly above you at a apparent or at a calculated set distance. It's not really relevant. So the distance is completely irrelevant at all times for navigation. It's completely superfluous.
I mean, I see it as the same thing as, when NASA are the ones that show you a pretty magical water ball flying around in the vacuum, right? But in their documents, they say when they're building vehicles, we have to consider the Earth as flat and stationary. Well, the story just changed up, didn't it? Why would you show me one thing and then tell me in practical use, to put people's lives in risk, we have to assert that it's flat and stationary before we do anything?
Who sent the chart?
What's that?
Who sent the chart?
I did.
Did you want to talk about it?
Well, you wanted to know if Mars was part of the tables in the Nautical Almanac, and it shows it right there.
Oh,
Aries,
perfect.
Venus,
I'm
Mars.
glad that got... when you put your neck out and like, okay, you're saying it is, but thank you. I'm glad. It makes me rest easy a little bit. Great, thank you.
Yeah, but I want to comment on what Chocolate said as well, because then you just keep adding on to the inconsistencies of the globe, which is, well, you can't measure an angle without a tangent plane, so we got to assume the Earth is flat to get the angle. So at every point, their whole thing breaks down. They got to always go back to a flat Earth, an Earth that's stationary, not moving, and distances that are important or not important, said and unsaid. I mean, it's like, when are you guys going to take a position that actually defends the globe? They never do.
They never will.
We don't need a position
Yeah.
to defend the globe. It's self-evident.
The problem is just defending the globe requires having both positions simultaneously. That's why they sound the way they sound when they're trying to defend this crap. That's exactly why.
So I see. So to defend the globe, they have to use the flat Earth proofs.
Exactly, because that's how you got your globe. That's why they sound like crazy people right now. I mean, sorry about you, but it's not our fault. You're the ones asserting that we live on a ball, but then you need a flat plane to get the ball in the first place? That's terrible. That's a shitty place to be in 2022 for you globers. Sorry.
Indeed. Any axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
You just covered that. Star rotation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Gas going down, go boom boom.
Which one?
Come on, break it down. Scientific evidence for gravity. Do they have any? Guess not.
Not globers.
They're not here to defend it. They must have both sides of the argument. They're driving them nuts, Chuck.
That's weird, because like 5-6 years ago, there would have been 10 globers yelling at us about how this is all science.
The body of science. The body of science.
Did we get a hello from Adam?
Guys.
Hey, Adam.
Afternoon, guys. Bone to pick with you, Mr. Oakley.
Got a bone to pick with me.
Yeah. So
Oh, yeah, go on.
I'm literally driving back from dropping some medicines off, and I've just caught a flat Earth debate, and the bit I catch is you saying there's a low quality of puns on flat Earth debate.
Yes. I justified it. Do you hear my justification?
I heard you go on to say that yours were high quality, though. Yeah.
Oh, obviously, I'm going to say that. That goes without saying.
Yeah, no. Good afternoon, guys.
The standard of puns is low because my belief is that a good pun should not interrupt the flow of the conversation and ideally slip everybody in the conversation by.
I don't buy that.
In that case, no one could ever prove it.
It should hit you a sentence or two later.
Only a bystander should catch it. Or, exactly, Adam, you took the words out of my mouth. It gets caught a little bit later, once the conversation's moved on a little bit, for it to be embarrassing for the person to say, did you just ask him if he came up with this on his own? You see what I'm saying?
Well, then I stand victorious in my defense, because Chocolate many times has said, after a second or two, ha, ha, ha.
I didn't say they were all low standards. I mean, as an accumulative average.
Wait a second. I'm still waiting for the pun from the other day that you wouldn't let be repeated.
I don't ever let them be repeated. Unless there's rumpusing going on. If I think it hasn't been heard, then fair enough.
You threw that law in right at the moment, dictator.
It's just best to not have them repeated, because then the people who've caught it in the moment and haven't said anything can chuckle to themselves, and everyone gets on with their day. That's the ideal pump. I'm not saying they're all going to be gold.
Mine are always 18 karat, buddy.
The problem with puns, it causes a chain reaction, Neil.
What was the deal yesterday?
18 karat fool's gold.
What's the deal yesterday with that Brian guy? Because I didn't know there was people in the flat Earth community, in quotes, that were apprehensive, shall we say, about there being containment for the gas pressure. I didn't know that was the thing.
Yes. I've been going at it with him for a while. He goes on Gem Pandas and he says, I don't know if there's a container. And he talks about 14 PSI and blood pressure and this. And you heard it all yesterday. I'm not going to repeat it.
I didn't, but I've seen QE spitting a few chips in war of them. So what?
It was a bit
I
long-winded.
heard was that you have different cables for AC and DC, which...
No, this is before that conversation.
Yeah, but at least with the blood pressure, he's got an IV.
It's a bit like when, do you remember when Ranty Flat Earth questioned the same thing about 5 years ago? And the basis that he questioned it on was because he didn't appreciate that when you've got a tyre, it's at zero pressure when it's in equilibrium with the air around it. So therefore, what reads 0 on a gauge is actually 14.7. Well, likewise, if you expel gas from your physical being, that's maybe a PSI or two above standard atmospheric, even though air doesn't take the shape of a sphere, but by common vernacular, atmosphere meaning the air pressure around you, it's a little bit higher. Well, likewise, if you put 1 psi into a tyre, it's 15.7 psi. But that was it. That was his basis for it. I can't understand how liquid could pump out of your body when it's only pumping out at a couple of psi. Well, a couple of psi above the standard natural psi that we experience in our air.
It's all pressure, Nathan.
But to have gas pressure, you've got to have containment. It's an antecedent consequent relationship. You can't have gas pressure unless you've got a container.
Can't have any kind of pressure without something to press upon.
Correct.
Exactly.
But I liked how you use that hydraulic example, because you couldn't get around that.
Gases and liquids, sir. Is that what we...
Well, that's what Nathan explained to him. He was trying to claim it's all pressure. It's the same thing.
Not really compress liquids, can you, in that? That's why hydraulics work so well. So you can apply the pressure within it, but that's not affecting the molecular behavior, whereas within a gas, you're changing the compacting more, aren't you? Whereas within hydraulics, it's surface pressure that you push out, isn't it?
I think the part you missed was Nathan saying, what if you introduce gas into the hydraulics, what would happen? And that's where he...
Yeah, air into the hydraulics, what would happen?
No, it busts it, doesn't it?
Same pressure, though, right? No, it's not.
No, because that will compress, won't it? When you press the pedal there, you're going to then start compressing the gas, opposed to...
You get air in your hydraulic lines, it's going to mess the whole system up. Therefore, air pressure and liquid pressure are two different things.
Did we cover scientific evidence of gravity or not?
We just did. There we go. Let me move on. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of cosmology, astronomy, or astrophysics?
Never.
Plenty of things get labelled as science, though, don't they?
Why is it never, Neil?
Nimrod tried and failed.
Is that why it's never?
Come on, you've got to expand on that, Neil.
How are you going to vary and manipulate the stars, the sun, or the moon? Just explain to me, and I'll get line right up with you.
You want it to be science, it's the other way around. You're not trying to... It depends how you look at it. You can call your dependent variable in the respect that you're attempting to vary it, but the variation is constant in terms of those things. What you're trying to do is establish what causes their variation, i.e. you vary and manipulate A, which is at this point an unknown, and cause the effect we observe in nature. That would be the star's rotation. So when you say, how are you going to vary the stars? Well, if you're going to claim it as science, you'd actually be varying the cause of the movement of the stars to validate it as the independent variable, aka cause of the effect.
How are you going to do that?
Well, you can't do that either. It's an unknown. But there may be a cause of it, is what I'm saying. Just because we don't know, there's plenty of things in science that haven't been established at a point, and then they are. Before that point, the genius who went, I wonder if it's this that causes it. And then they vary it to validate it. Before that point, it was an unknown also. Well, just because this is an unknown
Hold
doesn't
on.
mean it's outside.
Earth is man's, the heavens are the Lord's.
There's a claim of how the stars rotate, though.
That's correct. Coriolis drift, 15 degrees an hour thereof.
So I guess you would have to vary and manipulate the turning of the reference frame.
Correct. You'd have to vary and manipulate the turning Earth in order to validate that as a scientific claim.
Why
Can we do that, Neil?
Yeah, Neil.
Stories and... Sorry.
What's that, Chocolate?
I don't see anybody doing it. You could Neil all you want.
I was just gonna say, why aren't there like loads of stories of pilots telling us how they navigate over a moving Earth and how they have to expertly pilot while landing on a moving runway? Why does that never happen?
Because Earth's not rotating. It's not causing drift. The cause of the stars moving isn't Coriolis deflection. There'd be natural consequences that Chocolate just described if it was.
Before I'd put all the effort in to seeing if I could vary what makes the Earth rotate, I'd probably do something logical. Science, but just logical to see if it was worth going to all that effect. And look back through history, I could look at Aries' failure. Look at that, use the logic inferred from there to say, don't even bother trying to change the rate of spin of the Earth because it's not the Earth that's spinning, as demonstrated.
Even if you just went back in the day, when people used to just put themselves in balloons, you would have at least sort of had an observation if you could notice the Earth spinning away from you as you're floating above it, because that's what would happen. But they don't even have that as an observation. So it's like you're talking about Sagnar. I mean, come on. It would just be self-evident. It's one of those things that would just be self-evident, especially because we like to put vehicles and ourselves in the sky somehow or another as people.
Somebody said it earlier, holding two positions.
Yeah, I did.
Can't feel it really, can't you?
Yep.
Well, Phil Bell thinks it's okay.
Why does he think? What does he think is okay?
Everything.
Well, yeah, I mean, they have to agree with the story, right? They don't have any other choice, really. If they came out and said tomorrow that the moon's actually 4 million miles away, they'd have to believe that too. It's unfortunate being like a slave of a narrative. It's terrible.
Just change the model, right, Chocolate?
Just change it up. Oh, the model's wrong. Okay, thanks, lady.
How about any evidence for self-perpetuating molten iron core at the presupposed at the center of a presupposed spherical Earth?
Yeah, I talked
You
about
lost me at
Thea yesterday,
presupposed.
didn't I? Did I not talk about Thea?
Yesterday.
Yeah.
What about it?
Well, Thea hit Earth at a glancing blow. So in this diagram here, let's just pause this screenshot. Not that it's the best one for this example, but why not? So imagine over here somewhere, right, you've got a planet called Thea, and its orbit just passes Earth's orbit in the heliocentric nonsense, right? But one day, it doesn't just pass it, it collides with it at a glancing blow, right? There's a massive, massive impact. But while it destroys a fair bit of the surface of Earth, and obviously obliterates the majority of Thea, the debris, which is all around, coalesces into the moon. And the molten iron core that was at the centre of Thea is now deposited essentially in the centre of Earth, making it have a bigger presupposed spherical molten iron core. And the debris forms the moon, and that's the story of Thea. That's why we have Earth as it is, with a molten iron core that's bigger than it potentially should be based on the time frame they've given it.
Well, that's a story. The question is, any evidence?
I saw that episode of How the Universe Works. Filled with CGI, it was beautiful.
You want evidence for something that happened that many millions of years ago?
Because obviously there's an observer for such
No,
a
but
thing,
they
right,
think
John?
they have it, right? The redshift and all that. They think they have it. They think they're looking into the past, billions of years ago.
Yeah, well, it has to be, doesn't it? Because there's no way the Earth could have formed through accretion and have that level of stuff. It requires another planet to come and deposit its stuff and a lot of water as well, so that we could have the Earth as this construct now. Because within the model, it doesn't make sense. It can't happen. So we have to have another story to account for why it doesn't fit in the model. And there you go. So it has to be true. Otherwise,
Okay, perfect. What's the story for the infinite distance? If we've got Earth with set distances, I know we covered this earlier, but what's their story? What's the reason? I want a story for why we've got to set them to infinite distances when it's life or death, and, you know, NASA are wrong. We haven't got this set distance to Mars. It's now a navigation star, light coming in parallel, infinite distance. Why? What's the story that goes along with that?
Well, it's obvious. The angle from the equatorial plane will correspond to a curved surface if you put a tangent plane below you.
Well, with the scaling values that you would be using in a heliocentric model, I don't see the difference between the angle in an infinitely distant object and an object at an astronomical distance.
There isn't. If you understand that all you've done is applied a scale, and you also understand that the scale and numbers that are set out are based on Venus having the same value as our claim to be our value. Once you know that, and you just go, well, obviously you can just slide that scale up and down wherever you like. That doesn't alter the point that I made earlier. No, according to their current rhetoric, it's critically important to know the distances to things like Mars and the Moon. Why? Well, because we're sending stuff there. So we need to know the distances. I know we're begging the question of all the other crap that comes before. I also disclaimed that last time I covered it in this show. But I'm saying, if they're going to have a distance, and they're going to claim to send stuff to those distances, and even justify previous journeys with the distances and the fuel used, then why is it the story that we relinquish that the moment light comes in parallel to an equatorial plane or a dome of the heavens off a flat plane? You know, I get that they're moving the angle to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth. What I don't get is the story of why the scaling value no longer applies and the distance is infinite. I know it works that way, but why suddenly NASA wrong? Why are they suddenly no longer, you know, got their importance of the distances that they've set at the scales that they've already decided on? I want a story for it. I demand a story.
I think I just told you. Did you hear what I said?
I did hear you, but your explanation was that it doesn't matter, it doesn't make any difference. And my response was to say it does make a difference when simultaneously you've got a critical distance when you're sending stuff to that distance that you're measuring with your sextant.
they're different models.
Right. Well, what do you measure? You're measuring the planets with what, and you're measuring the stars with what?
An angle.
What kind? No, you got to use something to measure the angle. You can't just do it with your eye.
Okay, a protractor.
You're not going to get that kind of level of error that you could be able to distinguish the difference.
You don't think it's going to make any difference to scale it with Mars when they've done all of their calculations, the long-winded page 83 calculations with dips to horizons that have got a straight line to them? When they're doing that, I know for a fact that that example comes with light coming in parallel. That's the only way it works. Correct?
We're conflating models. Celestial navigation and the assumptions, whether they're infinite or just apparent, is for us to navigate across the plane. It's a model that works for that. From a flat Earth point of view, we assume an apparent position. From a baller's use of it, they stick it all to infinity for that purpose of that model. And again, here we, as a baller, have to hold two positions, because we are in the celestial navigation just going to put them infinite and not assign a distance. But if we're then going to go into the heliocentric NASA model of being able to travel between these things, then there is an implication that there has to be an actual distance. And that would therefore cock up the fact that you've stuck Mars and everything else out at infinity, so you wouldn't be able to use celestial navigation to draw any inference from them.
Gotcha.
But it's like
hold on, Chocolate. Just from my own understanding, you're saying that at the point that they move the angle down to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth and just describe it as being at the centre with the angles to a parallel light source, at that point it's actually a completely different model.
It's just navigating on a flat plane. You can change your coordinate system to put that data you've got from celestial navigation onto a ball. You can change, but all it's dealing with is the surface. Still, it's calculating a position on the surface relative to the stars, whichever way you view it. What it's not doing is locating stars.
Okay. So in other words, where I'm positioning this, you start with Bob the science guy, got his name right in the end. With his whiteboard, he's already begged the question. He's got his angle to a tangent point. He's got his sensible horizon, and he's got his line to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth, and the light coming in parallel. When he moves the angle that he's measured, presumably already done on the whiteboard, to the centre, that's the moment that you, as a flat earther, point out that, okay, at that point, you're relinquishing all claims from NASA of the distances because you're changing model. When you move that angle to the centre, you're actually moving to a celestial sphere model. You're no longer using the heliocentric model you started with. And by doing so, you're relinquishing all claims of distances that NASA use. So that's the concise summary of what that means when they move the angle to the centre and essentially change models and destroy NASA's claims of distances. Correct?
Yeah, there is no distances in the celestial sphere model. So when they go that to locate, they're working within the celestial sphere model, and that has the only distances are nautical navigators minutes, nautical miles, but they're not relevant to the distances between the stars. They're relevant to the GP lengths on the surface. That's the only place they have a relevance, an actual real distance, is when you put them on the surface.
But you would think that since we've supposedly established the distances of these things, I mean, we have we've landed 5-6 rovers on Mars supposedly. So I'm pretty sure in the heliocentric nonsense, we're pretty sure of where that thing is. So why wouldn't using the distance? Go ahead.
Just
okay.
Go on, John. You go.
Well, see, I was going to disagree with you. I mean, I know they're jumping models. We all know they're doing that. But Nathan hand-waved that part just to get to the point that, is there a difference? And could you measure the difference between infinite and astronomical?
No.
But they're not supposed to be infinite. I think isn't that the point?
The difference is infinity.
All I'm doing is I'm saying, regardless of whether or not you can measure a difference, if you're saying, okay, if you did actually clock it at the distance to Mars based in the heliocentric model off the celestial sphere model, how out would you be? Not very. It doesn't matter. They're justifying it with parallel light, right? That's how they have to justify it. The light comes in parallel. Not almost parallel, oh, it will make no difference. It's just it comes in parallel. So at that point, what you've got is their justification for the light at a parallel to the celestial sphere, right? So they're using a different model. Now, that's what I'm pointing out is not only can you say, okay, so you're swapping model at this point, you're also, when doing so, relinquishing the distances to all these stars. Now, previously we've just said, oh, so they say it comes in parallel. Well, that's not right. Look at this picture of a sun. No, that's useful. I'm not saying that's wrong. Tenth Man typically does it. But I'm saying More useful is to point out that when they move your man from the top of the ball in their diagram to the centre, they're changing model and relinquishing the distances to their claimed bodies that are rocks in the sky. Rather than just saying no, light doesn't come in parallel, you can strap that on at the end. Also, light doesn't come in parallel. But in order for you to change model at this point, so we're onto a second model, throwing NASA and SpaceX and anybody else that's travelling certain distances under the bus in order to do so. I just want that to be highlighted rather than just pointing a picture of a sun up and going, light doesn't come in parallel. Well, that's not been successful. They're still moving forward after changing model and in so doing relinquishing their claims that NASA make.
You're going to need R. They derive the distances from R with the transit of Venus. They've got all the scales and relationships, but you've then still got to apply it to a heliocentric model, and then have a scalar to it to then define those distances in the heliocentric model based on your scalar. You did take as a flat Earth angle, but
right. With that, I'm going to say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on a Premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!